Yeah.
I can't. As a life coach, I hear that all the time, especially from my new clients. I can't stop drinking alcohol. I can't stop doing drugs. I can't get out of this dysfunctional marriage. I can't quit this job that I hate. The reason why I'm standing on this stage tonight and what qualifies me to teach the healing power of letting go is that 16 years ago, what I was holding on to and what I was unwilling to let go of, it almost killed me. So if you're watching this right now and you are holding on to something that does not serve you, if you're unwilling to let go, then my story is for you. And it all started when I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, it was my responsibility to protect my sisters. It's a tall order for a 6-year-old, but that was what my dad came up to me. He said, "Mijo," comes up to me, he says, "Mijo," he gets down, "Mijo, it's your responsibility to take care and protect your sisters." Of course, I had my shoulders back, my chest out. I said, "Yes, Dad, it's my job to protect my sisters." And so at 8 years old, my opportunity comes. I'm on the playground. My sister comes running to me. She says, "Omar, there's this kid picking on me." "Where is he? Where is he?" "He's over there on the playground." I run over to the playground, shoulders back, chest out, looked him right in the eye. And I said, "Stop messing with my sister." The kid punches me in the stomach, knocks the wind out of me. I drop to the ground. I can't breathe. I can't move. I've never been punched in the stomach in my life. I'm 8, terrified. As soon as I can catch my breath, the only thing that I can think to do is to get up and run to the principal's office. So immediately I go, "Oh, teacher, this kid is picking on my sister and he punched me in the stomach." And that moment would change my life forever, because from that moment on, I would run. I would run away from everything and everyone that threatened me in my life. I stopped standing up for myself. I stopped standing up for my sister. I had failed. And as a child at 8 years old, right, feeling weak, scared, and small, I tried to become small. I tried to become invisible. Shoulders down, chest down. This went on for 8 years. Because kids that walk around like this do not get ignored. They get targeted by the bullies. So I got picked on, bullied, made fun of year after year. I remember they used to call my house, "Mr. Pinto, Omar's getting picked on again. Can you come pick him up?" He's asking for his mom. And I remember my dad, I could tell he was so frustrated with me, And so I remember my dad was kind of a bully. He kind of picked on me a little bit. He actually picked on me a lot. And I remember one time he was trying to get me to kind of man up. And so we were driving, and I remember, man, it was my mother, my 2 sisters, and I were in the car. We're driving somewhere. Some guy comes out, cuts off my dad, and my dad starts screaming at the guy. He starts screaming at my dad. The guy pulls over. My dad pulls over. I'm sitting in the back seat. I'm terrified. My dad runs out of the car. Let me paint the picture for you a little bit better. My dad is 5 foot 5 inches tall. He is not a tall man. He runs out of the car. But however, at 5'5", he did weigh 200 pounds. Okay, so he was not a thin man. So he runs out, and this guy comes out of the car, and he's towering over my father. And my dad comes out and he's pointing his finger at the guy. He's screaming at him. The guy's pointing his finger and screaming at my dad. Nothing happens. It's a screaming match. He gets back in the car. He's furious. Nobody says a word. We get to the next stop sign. He stops the car. He puts his arm on the seat. He looks back. He says, "You see that, son? That's how you stand up for yourself. I don't care how big somebody is. You have to stand up for yourself, or they're going to pick on you for the rest of your life." And I said, "Yeah, Dad. Yeah, Dad." And he starts driving. He goes, "Oh, yeah, Dad. Yeah, Dad." And my mom starts, "Hey, leave my boy alone." A lot of that went on. So I was kind of a mama's boy. And every time my dad would kind of take a shot at me or try and kind of get me to man up a little bit, my mom would come in the background to save me. And so what happens is this. For 8 years, what you saw was this scared little kid that was shy, that was picked on, that was bullied. But what you did not see, what was happening on the inside of me. I hated going to school. I hated the other kids. I hated my dad. I hated myself. And what was starting to build inside of me was this anger and bitterness and resentment. Until I turned 16. And then things would change yet again. I got my driver's license and I got my first job at Carl's Jr. My dad was so proud. He goes, "Oh, finally I get to see my son in uniform." I got my first girlfriend. I met my first set of friends. And I was just loving life. And finally, my new set of friends invite me to a house party. I get to the house party and I get handed my very first beer, 16 years old. And it all went away. It was all gone. Instantly, it was gone. The fear, the self-loathing, the sadness, the loneliness, the insecurity, it was gone instantly. I was so happy. I became a different person. I became the person I guess I'd always wanted to be. Happy and free and confident, talking to all the girls. It was fantastic. It was the best time of my life. And I knew in that moment that alcohol was the solution for me. That alcohol was going to change my life. From now on, I finally realized what was missing with me. And it was this liquid courage. So for the next few years, the last 2 years of high school and college were fantastic. I will say that, right? Now, I barely graduated from high school. I didn't finish college, right? But I wasn't really there for an education. I was there to drink, party, and pick up girls. And that's what I did. So fantastic time that did not come without its consequences. You see, what was happening was that when I was 8 years old, there was a moment where I felt like I could be a hero, like I could defend my sister. And that moment when that kid knocked me on my ass, it felt as though the hero had died and the victim had emerged. And so at this moment, it felt as though the hero was starting to surface again. It started to feel really good. But you see, what happens is that when you start to lift all of that fear and all of that loneliness and all that sadness starts to lift, what also started to come to the surface was all the anger, bitterness, and resentment. And so I started picking fights. I became very angry, drunk, and I would go to parties and I would pick fights. And I remember waking up so many mornings, black eye, busted lip, blood all over me. And I would call my friend, I'd call my best friend, I'm like, Gordo, man, what happened last night? He's like, man, are you all right? I said, man, I don't know, man. I'm in a lot of pain here, but, what happened? He goes, oh, dude, we were at that party last night and you got wasted again. You walked right up to the school bully, started talking trash, took a big old swing, missed completely, and these two guys pummeled you to the ground. We had to drag you out of there. You see, for me, it wasn't about winning or losing. For me, it was about the fight. For me, it was about being able to stand up for myself, not being afraid. That's what it was about for me. And consequence after consequence, I would have to face fights, embarrassing my friends, losing girlfriends, getting arrested for a DUI, waking up in jail. Consequence after consequence I would face. But if I had to choose between the consequences of alcohol and the self-loathing and fear that I felt when I was sober, there was no choice. I was drinking. And this went on for 12 years before I moved to Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, that was the game changer. See, I moved down to Costa Rica in 1999 to open up an online casino and sportsbook. And you want to talk about next level. You want to talk about becoming a badass. So here I am opening up an online casino and sportsbook, making friends with all these other very seedy characters in the online casino business. I felt like I had arrived. I watched too many Scarface and casino movies, right? You know what I mean? My role models were Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And so here I am. I had arrived. I could reinvent myself. So at the same time, I met this beautiful Costa Rican girl. She was 21 years old, I was 29. And I met the rocket fuel that same week of all that is confidence and power. Cocaine. And I loved it. Nothing in my life made me feel more confident, stronger, more powerful than when I did cocaine. And I said, this is it. This is it for me. And I immediately started to live this double life because my girlfriend was not having it. I just met this girl and she was like, I don't want nothing to do with that drug lifestyle. So I had to lead this double life where I was a boyfriend during the day and as this rock star partier at night. So I remember she had to be home by midnight and I would, as soon as she would take off to go home, I would call the taxi driver. Yo, come pick me up. He would take me down to the casino, right, where my friends were at. And we'd be doing drugs and drinking and gambling till 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember so many mornings sitting at the blackjack table and looking at my watch going, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Man, we got to get out of here. 6 o'clock, we got to get to the office. And I remember walking through the door, just walking through the casino door and the sunlight hitting me in the face like a vampire. And I don't care how much of a badass you think you are. When you walk out of a casino at 6 a.m. in the morning on a Tuesday, you feel dirty. I felt greasier than a gas station mop. But I kept on. For that first year, I kept it going. And so finally, my girlfriend moves in with me. Well, I'll move in with him. Because then he's got to stop if we move in together. I got worse. So then I asked her to marry me a year later. Oh, we're engaged. He's got to slow down now. I got worse. A year later, we finally get married. And I remember the conversation we had weeks after we got married, and I was still out partying. She's like, we're married now. You're not supposed to do this anymore. I said, well, just because we got married doesn't mean that I signed up for all this. 6 months later, she gets pregnant. He's got to stop. I get worse. 4 months into the pregnancy, she's gone. See, it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the baby. So at that moment in my life, I started losing everything. I lost my wife. I lost the business. I was really sick. I was in a really bad place physically. And finally, one day, I'd done so many drugs. My heart was racing out of my chest. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I knew that I couldn't do this anymore. I knew it. Something inside of me had had enough. I'd lost too much. And in that moment, I found God again. And I got down on my knees and I said, God, please help me. Please help me. I cannot stop doing drugs. I'm ruining my family. I'm ruining everything around me. And I just can't stop. So take me out of this world or help me get clean. I prayed for death. I hoped for death. The next morning I woke up and I had what many of us in recovery call a spiritual awakening, a moment of clarity, if you will. And I saw the picture of the therapist that I'd gone to see 10 months prior. You see, 10 months prior to that moment, I had gone to see a therapist. I told the therapist that I needed help. And he said to me, he looked across the table from me and he says, I don't know if I can help you. You're a drug addict. And what I have seen work with drug addicts is you go to a 12-step support meeting, NA or AA. And I said, no. I'm not an addict. I've got a problem with cocaine. Listen, I'll pay you. You fix me. It's all good. 10 months later, I'm praying for death. And all I could see was his face in that moment. I got up. I grabbed the clothes that were on the floor. I didn't think. I just did. I got dressed and I drove to his office. I didn't call. I just hoped. I hoped that he would be there. And I get there and there he is. And I said, I need help. I can't stop doing drugs. I need your help. He says, I'm so glad you're back. Let me give you the directions to that meeting. It starts in an hour. I immediately drove to that meeting. I sat down, 5 other men, and I said, my name is Omar. I'm an addict and I need help. And they said, you are in the right place. Keep coming back. A few months later, my daughter was born. And I remember that I was sitting in the delivery room. My now ex-wife, she went through a C-section. So she was out cold. And I was in this room by myself, just kind of sitting there. It was late at night. It was dark. And this nurse walks in with my daughter. She says, would you like to hold your daughter? I said, yes, please. And she puts this little angel in my arms. I knew in that moment I had a lot more than my daughter in my arms. I had a reason to live. I had purpose. And all of a sudden, I had this vision in my mind. I had this vision of her being 16 years old, being in school, and her friends saying, what does your dad do for a living? And she says, my dad died of a drug overdose. My dad's in jail. And I started to cry. And I was crying all over her. And I said, God, help me. Help me. Help me make her proud of me. Help me be the man she deserves me to be. And this fire just ignited inside of me. And I knew that there was nothing that I wasn't going to do to make things right. And I started to work. I was all in. I started going to 12-step meetings every single day. I worked the steps. I joined Narcotics Anonymous. I'll plug that real quick. NA was my 12-step recovery path, and I started working the steps. I got a sponsor a year into my recovery. I was sponsoring guys. I was all in. It was changing my life. My focus was clear. I knew what I had to do. Now, 3 years into my recovery is when I was doing my 9th step. For those of you that know what a 9th step is, where you make amends to the people you've harmed the most. And so it's time to make amends to my ex-wife. I still wanted her back. I mean, a big part of me was like, doing the work in hopes that maybe, she'd come back. So 3 years later, I show up and I say, I'm here to make amends. I can't say I'm sorry for all the horrible things that I've done to you in our marriage and in our relationship. But if there's anything that I can do to repair the harm that I've done, if you need me, because you don't, I'd like us to get back together, but that's me. I said, but if you need me to tell you that it's okay to move on with your life, that it's okay for you to get remarried and have another kid, then that's what I'm here to do, whatever it is that you need me to do. And we're sitting on the couch. This tear starts rolling down her face. She looks at me. She says, I needed you to say that. I needed you to say that. I was afraid that you would leave. And it was more important for me that your daughter have her father in her life than for me to move on with mine. That broke me in all the right places. I would never be the same again. What I was staring at was the purest example of unconditional love that I had ever seen in my life. I didn't even know that existed. She held on for her. And we became best friends and partners in raising our daughter. My daughter only knows unconditional love. She's never seen us fight, ever. There was another amends that I needed to make right after that one. This was a tough one because this one was with my father. I hadn't spoken to my dad in 2 years. And when I was getting clean and sober, my parents were going through this nasty divorce. I blame my father, of course. I always blame my dad. And 2 years, nasty divorce. And finally it ended. I was about a year sober, and my sister got married, and I was like the only sober person at the wedding. I don't know if any of you guys can relate to being the only sober person at a wedding, if you can even remember. I actually gave the speech. At my sister's wedding, and at the end of the night, my dad's wasted. He's assing out, and we're sitting at the end, and it's just my uncle, my dad, and I. I was this little chip on my shoulder, about what happened in the divorce. And he starts giving me marital advice. And he starts with the little finger pointing, like he did to that guy, and he's like, mijo, you got to get her back, and this is what you got to do. And I snapped. I said, really? Really? What the hell would you know about being a good husband? What gives you the right to give me any marital advice at all? My uncle was like, hey, yo, man, settle down. That's your father. I go, yeah, he's my father. Whatever, man, I'm out. I walked off. And I did not speak to my father for 2 years. My sponsor comes up to me. You're doing real good on those amends. Thank you. Yep. Pretty much almost all done. They're going fantastic. Yeah, what about your father? Yeah, what about him? He owes me an amends. He's like, yeah, that amends is not for him. It is for you. It is eating you alive. Week after week, did you call your father? I said, no, but I'm going to get to it. He goes, let me ask you a question. What would happen if your sister called you tomorrow and she said something had happened to your father? But that got me thinking. So that night I picked up the phone, man. I said, Dad? He goes, Mijo? He said, Mijo? I said, hey, Dad. He said, son, how you doing? Still clean? I said, yeah, Dad, I'm still clean. I said, Dad, I'm calling to make an amends for the wedding. He says, you don't owe me an amends, son. I love you, but I sure would love to come see you. Where did it go? Where did all that anger and bitterness and resentment, where did it go? It was almost like it was never there. My dad came. He was supposed to spend 2 weeks with me. He spent 2 months with me. We lived together. I took him everywhere like a puppy. I had this great job, right? And we would take trips together. My friends loved my dad. I got to meet his granddaughter. Literally one of the most amazing times of my life. And so things would change. For the next 2 years, hey, Dad, how are you? Hey, I'm going to come to States. Oh, great, come. And I was there for 2 years. It was fantastic. Life was like awesome. And I remember I was in Costa Rica. I was driving, and the phone rings. It's my sister. She says, oh. I said, hey. She says, oh. I knew. I said, it's Dad. She says, it's Dad. He's sick. Oh, you got to come home. I raced back home. My dad had stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver. It's the toughest year of my life. I wanted to get high every single day. My 2 sisters and I took care of our dad for his last year. And for me, I took care of him for most of that time. And it was incredibly painful. And I remember one time, because he loved the ocean. He absolutely loved the ocean. So we were driving down one of the highways when he was still lucid. And I pulled over on the side of the road so that we could see the ocean. And there was these beautiful seagulls flying around us. We're just kind of smiling out. And my dad looks over at me. He says, Mijo, when you get married, don't treat your wife like I treated your mother. He was there for me when I couldn't be there for myself. I had to let go. I remember him taking his last breath. My sisters and I were surrounding the bed as he took his last breath. Let me tell you what I did not feel in that moment. I did not feel regret. I'd done everything that I could. I left it all on the table. And because of that, this month on May 26th, I celebrate 16 years clean and sober. And on my 10-year anniversary, I met the woman of my dreams. I met my beautiful wife, Marcella, who is here with us tonight. And she has been my rock since we met. As a matter of fact, on our second date, I knew we were going to get married. I remember I called one of my best friends. I said, Robert, this is the one. I'm getting married. He's like, enough already, slow it down. Easy does it. And I said, forget the drama. I'm just letting you know. This is a benchmark moment. I'm just letting you know. 3 months later, I asked her to marry me. She said yes, in case you were wondering. And I remember right before we got married, we were sitting in my old apartment. And we were sitting at the end of the table, the dining room table, and we're laughing, and she's staring at me, big smile, and it got quiet. And I was staring at her. I said, what are you thinking? And she said, I'm thinking that I hope that someday you can see yourself the way I see you. I hope that one day you can see how great you really are. And that fire, again, would burn even stronger inside of me and set me off. A year after we were married, I launched the Share podcast. As many of you know, the Share podcast is a recovery podcast. It's one of the leading podcasts. It has over 1.6 million downloads from listeners from all over the world. It's now called the Recovery Revolution. So much has changed in my life. I impact and inspire people all over the world. I started a Facebook group with over 5,500 members, all in recovery. I launched a coaching platform. I have a membership community, a mastermind community, a one-on-one coaching service. Everything I do from my home in Costa Rica. I've been invited to speak and open at Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics conventions in different parts of the United States. And 16 years ago, I prayed for death. What was I holding on to? What was I unwilling to let go of? You see, I thought I was holding on to the drugs and the alcohol. I thought I was unwilling to let go of this lifestyle, of this identity that I had created around drugs and alcohol, that my life was going to be boring without drugs and alcohol. But what was I really holding on to? What was 8-year-old Omar holding on to? What I was holding on to was all the anger and bitterness and resentment from all the childhood bullying that happened to me in my life. 8 years of being picked on, bullied, and made fun of. I wanted justice. I wanted somebody to pay for all those years that those horrible things happened to me in my life. But justice never came. Thank God justice never came, because if I had gotten the justice that I felt that I deserved in that moment when I prayed for death, I wouldn't be on this stage tonight. You see, justice was never going to heal me, but love did. Love healed me. Unconditional love healed me. You see, the message for me is very clear. The road out of addiction and the path to wholeness and healing is through unconditional love. The love of God, the love of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, the love for my daughter, for my father, for my ex-wife, for my wife. Love. Love healed me, and it continues to heal me today. You see, when I let go of all that anger, bitterness, and rage, when I let that go and I let love heal me, the victim died and the hero emerged. The man that you see here, standing here before you tonight, is the hero of his own story. I am the hero of my own story. The legacy that I leave behind for my daughter is the hero's journey. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind? if you're watching this right now and you are holding on to something, desperately wanting to let go, then there's 3 things that I want you to do right now. Number 1, you got to let go, or be willing to let go. Let go of everyone and everything that does not serve you. All the toxic friends, all the negative, hurtful self-talk, all the anger and resentment, let it go. And number 2, you got to go searching for love. You got to go looking for love. Go find it in your friends, in your family, in your coworkers. Go to a therapist. Go to a 12-step support group. Find a coach. Find me. Reach out to me. But go in search of love. And number 3, ask for help. Be open, be honest, be vulnerable, but ask for help. Don't ask for help with a but. I need help, but. Ask for help, real help. But the first thing you got to do is you got to let go. Let go. Let go and be healed. Let go and be loved. Let go and be great. It is time to be the hero of your story. My name is Omar Pinto. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I love you all.